right now for a little check-in on this. I have Dr. Raywat Deonandan, who's an epidemiologist and science communicator at the University of Ottawa. Welcome back.
Thank you.
How do you think Ottawa is doing right now?
Well, compared to what? Compared to
the rest of the province. I know, it's all comparative, isn't it?
Exactly. We're doing well compared to Peel and Toronto. We're not doing well compared to Kingston. We're doing better than we were last month, but not as well as we were doing back in the summer. So everything's relative. I think, Vera Etches had tweeted out that we're scratching the red zone, and we are now in the orange zone, but that depends on, of course, how you look at the numbers. And her tweet corresponds with when they change what the thresholds are. So she's not wrong if you look at certain things. So to get into the red zone, you need a weekly incidence rate of more than 40 cases per 100,000 population. That means about 400 cases in Ottawa per week. We're not there. We're halfway there. But you need a reproduction number of 1.2. We are there. And you need a test positivity rate of 2.5%. We're at 2.4%. So we're almost red. So it's not looking good in that sense.
So what is Dr. Paul Remiliotis talking about there that we're not far behind? Because it looks like our numbers are stabilizing.
Yeah, it depends on, again, the framework that you view this through. The wastewater analysis shows that our numbers have come down. So the community caseload has come down. The trend is difficult to assess without looking at, some more days worth. And our healthcare capacity is okay. I mean, I think we have 97% of our acute beds are filled, which is not unusual, and our ICU beds are 86%, again, which is not unusual. So I think there is room at the inn, to use that phrase. I'm not that worried about Ottawa. It's just that given the reproduction number of 1.2, that means we should expect more cases, a rise in cases in the next little while. So that's why we're likely to step into the red zone.
Plus, the other thing I want to point out is that we just reopened bars, restaurants, and gyms on November 7th, so it's only been 10 days. We're not fully seeing the effects of that yet. Now, I know a lot of people in those industries are saying that they're not responsible for driving cases, but anytime we make a change, it's really 2 weeks to see the impacts of it, isn't it?
That's right. Also, it's going to be a while before people maybe are brave enough to go back to bars and restaurants. I'm not sure how they're doing since they've reopened. Are they overfilled with the clientele? I'm not sure. But yeah, all these things, they're confounded by the fact that they're lagging indicators, and that's giving people headaches all the time. Looking at these single points of data, 1 day of data, doesn't tell us anything. It's the 7-day average, it's the 14-day average, and right now, it's not looking like we're going to stay orange for the next little while. We're not looking like we're going to go yellow anytime soon. We're going to stay orange or go red.
So the wastewater testing, I'm just looking at it right now, and again, I'm not an expert on this. It looks like there's a slight downward trend, but it's almost plateauing, right? Yeah,
exactly. So I take some comfort in that. It suggests that people aren't pooping out increasing amounts of virus. Now, will that be sustained? Have people acquired infection that's not yet being detected by the wastewater? Have returning travelers from Thanksgiving from other parts of the country? I'm not sure. But you're right to say that is probably the most objective measurement that we have, and other parts of the province don't have that data, and so they rely upon these other indicators to establish which zone they're in. And maybe they shouldn't be that way. Maybe we should look just at the wastewater. And if we do, I'm not worried about Ottawa, to be blunt. I think Ottawa's doing well compared to the rest of the province, and that wastewater fills me with confidence to make that assessment.
Mm-hmm. So when you say you're not worried about Ottawa, when you look to the future, do you think it's more likely we move into the red zone or into the yellow zone?
Oh, man, you're putting me on the spot, aren't you?
Or do we stay where we are? I mean, it kind of looks like we're plateauing where we are, but again, as you said, it's not clear that that's going to be sustained.
Well, if I have to make a prediction, it looks like I have to, based upon the fact that things have reopened lately, and based upon the fact that we're entering the holidays and people want to socialize, and based upon the fact that there seems to be less and less of a tolerance for holding back, I suspect we're going to enter the red zone.
Okay. I want to play a clip of Dr. Abdu Sharkawi. He's an infectious disease specialist who I spoke with yesterday. He says some doctors, as well as him, believe that we need a national approach to get the pandemic under control. Here's what he said.
One of the real, I think, deficits in our management of this pandemic has been too many layers of messaging, too many different principles being applied based on a regional approach. And I think that needs to change. I think we need a very unified understanding of this disease being one that can change in a relatively short period of time.
He said it's time to bring in the hammer. What do you think?
I think he's right that we need a national conversation on what the goal is. Is the goal to spare the healthcare system? Is the goal to prevent cases at all costs? Is the goal to sustain an economy? Is the goal to wait out the vaccine in comfort? I think we never had that conversation, and as a result, every province has a different take on this and has a different sense of what they're willing to expend in order to keep things, safe, for lack of a better word. Whether or not we should pursue an extreme strategy is something that epidemiologists and doctors really should not decide. It's something for the people to decide. What we should do is give you the options. And the options include an elimination strategy. We can go for COVID-0, and that has certain advantages for sure, and certain costs. Or we can go for things like the circuit breaker approach, which has a different set of costs that might be more tolerable to people because it's sudden bouts of short-term pain. Or we can go for saturation testing like the Slovakians have done. So there are various tools on the table, and we haven't had a conversation, as he points out, to decide which tool we want to use. It's sort of been imposed on us by the nerds like me.
So, listen, I think people are pretty familiar with a lot of those things because the public has been getting a crash course in epidemiology. Not that we're all so skilled in it, but we're trying to learn as we go. But I want you to explain one thing you said there, the saturation approach. What is that?
Saturation testing. So Slovakia, what they've done, they took a weekend and they bought a lot of cheap antigen tests from South Korea and they tested everybody in the country. If you test positive, you have to quarantine for 2 weeks. If you refuse to get tested, you got to quarantine for 2 weeks. If you test negative, you're free to go. You do this a couple of times, you take a couple of weekends, and suddenly you've got everyone labeled and under control. And you seal your borders and you can open your economy up. So it works for small populations. Theirs is like 4 million people. We could do this in Manitoba and Saskatchewan, I think, or even out Ottawa. But it takes political will, it takes getting the tests, it takes public compliance to go along with it. So again, that's a creative solution. And maybe months from now we'll find out that it failed. But at least it's something else to think about. And it doesn't require any shutdowns, it doesn't require any long-term pain. It just requires a bit of invasion into your privacy because you have to agree to be tested and to have your information shared with the government and so forth.
Ontario's top doctor yesterday was asked about Christmas. And he said he hopes the province will be in the green zone. He hopes everyone will be in the green zone. Your thoughts on that?
It's impossible. It's statistically
It seems
impossible.
Delusional, doesn't it, to say that when Toronto's in the red zone right now with over 500 cases?
It's not the most delusional thing he said of late. I mean, I'm not fond of criticizing people at that level, but he's
shots fired. Wow.
He said some strange things these past few months, right? And some of which have been quite problematic, and we've had to mop up after him. Things like the rate of false positives, which are, a misstatement. But this is particularly interesting because I understand where he's coming from. He's trying to suggest that, we have it in our power to get our lives back. And that's true. If everyone diminishes their average number of contacts voluntarily, then much of this goes away. But to dangle that green zone, a carrot in front of us might be a bit irresponsible. Ryan Imgren did an analysis to show that all of the provinces would have to get a reproduction number of 0.74 in order for this to happen, and no one's ever had that throughout the entire pandemic. So it's statistically impossible to happen unless you change the thresholds for what a green zone is.
Just want to let the listeners know who Ryan Imgren is. He's a hospital biostatistician and somebody who has been crunching the numbers and looking at all of this different stuff and basically analyzing it every day. So it's off the table even for places like Ottawa, you think?
Maybe not Ottawa, but I think it's highly unlikely. I mean, we'd have to pretty much have a lockdown. I voluntarily agreed not to leave our houses for the next couple of weeks to get transmission down that low.
Right.
It just seems so incredibly unlikely. It's not a responsible thing to say. It fills people with far too much optimism is not the right word, but it encourages them perhaps to act irresponsibly with the expectation that they'll be able to go to parties and stuff come the holidays. And that should not be the message. The message should be enjoy Christmas for what it is, a time to be with your loved ones and so forth, but do not see it as an opportunity to socialize or an expectation that the economy will be fully open then, because it might not be.
What do you make of these pacts that some people are making where they say, I won't see anyone for 2 weeks, I won't do anything for 2 weeks, and we can all get together and we don't have to wear masks?
That's
too good
that's
to be
a recipe
true?
for disaster for a number of reasons. One is, for some people, the disease cycle is more than 2 weeks. You can be harboring infection and not know it. because, not everything is the same for everybody. Second of all, can you really trust people not to be that circumspect? At some point, maybe you're going to go to the grocery store. Maybe you'll touch a doorknob you should not have touched. Maybe the mailman infects you. You just don't know without testing and repeated testing. So it is not a responsible thing to do. Why not just wear the mask? You can isolate, absolutely, but also wear the mask.
Dr. Raywat Deonandan, great to have you back on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you.